Take a second and think about the last time you had to give your opinion in English. Maybe it was in a conversation with friends, or in an English classroom, or maybe it was in a work meeting. You probably felt nervous, you got stuck, you couldn't get your words out, or your mind even went blank. If you want to solve that problem, you've come to the right place. Giving clear, well-structured, and confident opinions is the secret sauce to sounding fluent and persuasive in English. My name is Astro, and today I'm going to give you the simplest recipe for this. This is the framework that will enable you to give your opinion about every single topic in a fluent and a confident way. And it's the OAE, basically the opinion chunk, the argument, and the example. Here I have an example sentence that will show you what each part of the framework does. The first one is the opinion chunk. Basically, here you use a phrase to introduce the opinion. I'm using "in my view." Then you have the best way to learn English is by focusing on chunks rather than just grammar books. That would be the argument. That's what you think about the topic, your thought, your idea. And usually that second part is complemented by an extra detail. In this case, I'm showing you an example. For example, memorizing phrases will enhance your fluency and will make you speak more naturally, not word by word. So here you can see a fully structured opinion in English. Let me show you a second opinion so you can see how you can structure whatever you want to say about a topic using this three-step framework. So first you start with an opinion chunk, as far as I'm concerned. Then you have social media has a largely negative effect. So here you express what you think about the topic, and you don't always need an example. For example, here I'm using because. So I say social media has a largely negative effect because it promotes unhealthy comparisons among users. What I'm doing here basically is to add a different kind of complement. I talk about social media, I say that has a largely negative effect, and instead of giving an example, I can explain the cause, why I think that. Okay, now you got the basics, but what if you want to sound more intelligent? What if you want your opinion to be more convincing, persuasive, and articulate? That's where part 2 comes in. Now we're moving from the basics to expanding and elaborating your opinion with killer evidence and counter arguments. So let's jump to part 2. So to every opinion, you can add as many layers, as many ideas as you see fit. I'm going to give you some examples right here. So you have, in my view, the best way to learn English is by focusing on chunks rather than just grammar books. For instance, memorizing phrases will enhance your fluency and will make you speak more naturally and more quickly. Then I can add an extra idea with that addition structure. So I can say, furthermore, and, also, in addition, additionally, on top of that. Chunking reduces mental effort. When you memorize phrases like at the end of the day, blah, blah, blah. So when you add another idea, basically your opinion will sound more convincing because you're adding more support, more backup to your thoughts. And of course, the linker that you want to use at the beginning actually depends on the level of formality. So for example, using furthermore would definitely be more formal than and or also. Then you can also add contrast to your opinion, and you add contrast to show an opposing view or a different idea, just to show that yours is superior and stronger. So you have the example here. However, many traditional methods still rely on grammar practice, and grammar is important for accuracy, but focusing only on rules can make speaking slow and robotic. So I consider the opposite view, and I might give some truth to it, but I just do that to attack it and to make mine stronger. Then you can use other linkers such as despite this instead of however, although, on the other hand, but, nevertheless. I think that in conversation but is more common, but using however and on the other hand, although, will show a higher English level. You might also want to add a condition, which is basically something that must be true in order for your opinion to be valid. So for instance, you can see here, if someone consistently practices the chunks they hear, their speaking skills will improve dramatically. So there is a condition, which is practicing the chunks you hear, and then the valid opinion or the valid result is at the end. Your speaking skills will improve dramatically. Another chunk that you can use instead of if or another linker is unless, which is the negative version of if. In case, otherwise, you could even use provided that, which is more formal and more advanced than if. The condition is one of my favorite ways to complement an argument because it shows that you have taken into consideration several factors and several possibilities for your opinion to be true. And that shows more sensitivity and a greater way to analyze topics critically. You can also use emphasis to highlight the most important part of an argument and make sure that the listener grasps its significance. So the example here says, chunk learning provides immediate real-world utility, especially in casual conversations. So the focus here is shifting towards a very emphatic topic, which is casual conversations. Other chunks or linkers that you can use to introduce emphasis are in fact, as a matter of fact, and definitely. I really like as a matter of fact, and it's interesting to see that in conversation, a lot of native speakers just say matter of fact when they are speaking fast. So if you want to be formal, maybe you can use in fact, especially if you want to be informal, you could use the shorter version of as a matter of fact and use only the last three words. Comparisons are also great because they draw a parallel to a familiar concept, and that makes the argument easier to understand, more relatable, and more memorable for the listener. So the example says, just like a musician practices with the instrument, not just reading music theory, an English learner must practice ready-made phrases. It's the difference between knowing about music and actually being able to play music fluently. I love this comparison because it shows a tremendous sense of, let's say, critical thinking, because the speaker is capable of connecting two distant ideas to show how an argument can be even more persuasive. And other comparative linkers can be similar to, compared to or with, as, in the same way, different from. Sometimes the comparison is to show differences. Then we have cause and effect, and it basically refers to the reasons behind your argument and the possible consequences. As you can see in the example, it says, so the effect, because the learner is internalizing these patterns, their sentence structure becomes more complex naturally. That is the consequence of learning chunks, learning English with the or through the study of chunks. And then it says, this leads to greater confidence and less hesitation, since, because they are synonyms, they are recalling whole units instead of assembling individual words. This is a very complex opinion because it's handling both the reason and the consequence. Other chunks that you can use to talk about cause and effect are because, due to, since, as, and therefore. Concluding and summarizing can be really helpful, especially in a long presentation or in a long opinion. And it just shows that you are bringing your presentation to a memorable close. In the conclusion, you basically summarize the main opinion and paraphrase it. You state it in different words and try to add maybe a more dramatic touch, a more dramatic voice, so the listener can actually stay with your ideas. So you have here, in short, that's a good linker to start your conclusion. By prioritizing chunks over isolated vocabulary and grammar, students, learners are equipping themselves with the practical pre-built language required for natural, fluent, and confident communication. So this should persuade someone who doesn't know whether to study grammar or chunks to actually start studying chunks. Other linkers that you can use to start your conclusion can be to sum up, to summarize, and in conclusion. Now you know how to build a strong house of opinion, but every great house needs a great front door. We started part 1 with a few basic phrases to start your opinions, but if you want to sound advanced, you need variety. For our final bonus section, part 3, I'm giving you my top 15 best, most natural sounding chunks so you can use right now to give your opinions with confidence and fluently. So I have divided this list of chunks into 3 categories. First, you have strong opinion or fact, when you want to sound more persuasive and convincing, when you know that you're telling the truth. So you can say, it's true that, it is undeniable that, I strongly believe that, there can be no doubt that, it goes without saying that, which is a little bit more idiomatic. The data evidence clearly shows that. Then you have professional opinions, which can be useful in a working environment. So you can say, from my perspective, I would contend that, one must consider that, pretty formal, it is essential to recognize that, my primary concern is. And then you have more informal opinions such as, if you ask me, the way I see it, and to be perfectly honest. This is it. Now you know how to give opinions in English confidently and fluently. So if you like this video, please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button because it helps us to keep growing on this platform, and leave your comments. I have a gift for you in the description of this video. I have prepared a document with a summary so you can practice this on your own. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.